Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Addix with the Maryland Wineries Association, and we've got another special guest with us today, Paul Roberts from Deep Creek Cellars. We've been struggling with some tech and connectivity issues, which is why you should support rural broadband. But let me join Paul to the screen here, and we're going to get started. Paul, you there?
Hi, how are you all?
So, Paul, welcome. Glad you're on here.
Thanks for having me.
You are one of the folks that I've known the longest in the industry. You were number 11 in the modern wine industry and opening up a winery. So, tell us a little bit about Deep Creek Cellars.
Well, this is our 24th year, believe it or not, in business. My wife and I are the owners, and we've been the winemaking crew here all along. We've had part-time help with us over the years, but in recent years, we've decided that we're just so good at this and we love each other's company so much that we just do it all ourselves. It works out very well. It's an artisanal operation, but to do all kinds of different, get to run the tasting room, and I do a lot of small engine. But it's all good. And we've been very fortunate in the last decade to have established really solid connections for what I'm in Maryland. It's a family grower operation in Allegheny County near Cumberland. The grapes were planted for us. I actually designed the vineyard myself, and get the thrill of working with the same grapes year after year after year. And that makes us somewhat unique. We're not estate bottled, of course. We don't own that vineyard, but we get the beauty of working with the same fruit year after year. We typically make 5 or 6 wines. We're going to be tasting wines here today, primarily from 2018. Which everyone probably knows about the East Coast in 2018. It was a really, really challenging vintage, and we still made some wine in 18, but we had to take some other kind of evasive actions, and I think the wines turned out very well, actually. Kevin, I have lost the audio on you.
You've lost my audio. Well, good. At least it's me having tech problems, not you. So you see, Stephanie has just named you best winery in Maryland. So you owe Stephanie at least a glass of wine. So and Nadine's in the background there.
Thank you, Stephanie.
So Paul, you mentioned the vineyard in Allegheny. You've got, of course, some vines on site as well. What are the varieties that you've been focusing on? Because you were one of the first to do Pinot and one of the first to do, you had a Pinot Gris or a Pinot Blanc early on.
Right. We grow all 3 of the Pinot varieties over there, Gris, Blanc, and Pinot Noir. And believe it or not, there's a lot of difference in the way the grapes mature and behave in the vineyard. I'm surprised, they're all in the same family, but they're very different at the same time, just like all families, I guess, right? I think the real standout at the property, oddly, is the Cabernet Franc. And that has consistently made what I think is our best wine from that property. That goes in the watershed in 18 is not, we don't have it out yet, right. Barrel and aging, and so we won't be tasting that today. The Pinot, the main thing to understand about the red wines from these grapes is people have become used to drinking Pinot Noir that's like 15 or 16% alcohol, because from the West Coast of the United States, where, they're growing things on a desert and dripping water on them every now and then. And that is not the way Pinot Noir is grown almost everywhere else in the world. It's certainly not the way it's grown in its original habitat, so to speak, in Europe, in France, specifically in Burgundy. And our production is, I would say, much closer to that style. I wouldn't call it, I wish I could say that it was a Côte d'Or type Pinot Noir. I don't think it is. And that's not a slight to it at all. It's just a very different style. It's a little bit lighter in body than the main vines, the main producers in Burgundy, and probably more similar to what would be known as the high Burgundy wines or the Côte Chalonnais south of Burgundy. A little bit lighter body, earthy, fruity, much lower in alcohol. You can share a bottle of wine with a friend and still carry on a conversation with our wines because the alcohol is, modest. And in particular of the white varieties, the Pinot Blanc performs very well there. And we typically blend Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris. Sometimes we have made Pinot Blanc varietal wines as well, but typically they're the Pinot Grigio that we call it Pinot Grigio is a blend of the two, just because people know Pinot Grigio. It's an established brand, so to speak.
Well, speaking of that, let's jump right in and start talking about that wine. I think that's the ones you had for us.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to hold up the Pinot Grigio there for everyone to see. And I'll pour a sample here. One of the things that you'll notice about all of our wines, including our white, especially our white wines, is the very rich color of our white wines. We do not filter anything here, including our white wines. And a lot of people probably don't realize this, but on the North American continent, you can count on a couple of hands the white wines that are made without filtration, and we usually make 2 or 3 of them every year. So they're dark in color because there's nothing taken away, and they have an extraordinary purity because of that. Most vintages, I use a little bit of barrel fermentation and then blend the finished wine from oak fermentation in with stainless steel for the final wine. We did that in 18 as well, and so I'm just gonna kind of let you along here with me. Has a wonderful nose, kind of an apricot-y nose with a little peachiness in 18.
Experiencing some technical difficulties getting the stream from Garrett to Allegheny to Washington County and beyond. So we'll see if Paul comes back. And in the meantime, I will say that I've enjoyed Paul's wines and Nadine's wines, Deep Creek Cellars, for as long as they've been around. And I'd say what makes them very unique is the fact that these are, as Paul said, they're on the natural side. They're not filtered. The reds I would describe as rustic. I mean, you would taste a lot of similarities between these and some of the regions in France where you have kind of the more rustic style, Rhone style blend. So very, very cool what they're doing. It looks like we've officially lost them, so we'll see if they come back on. For those of you that don't know where Deep Creek Cellars is, so it's our, at this point, our westernmost winery. It's closer to Ohio than it is to Frederick or Baltimore, and it's truly an experience to go out there. And I remember when Paul was president of the Maryland Wineries Association, there were a number of meetings that he had to phone it in because even though it was late April or May, they were snowed in, and so it's quite the different climate. Hey, Paul, I was just bragging about your climate. If you're back
Great
there.
climate, poor internet.
Yeah, well, and that's it. Your internet got lost somewhere around Cumberland. So you were just talking about your wine and just how they're unfiltered, and I was telling the audience that your wines are more on the natural side and the rustic side, and they're not really refined or filtered or I guess quote unquote handled. You're actually going to taste the raw grape. You're going to taste what that variety is putting forth, and you mentioned some oak, but I've never seen heavy oak in your wines. I've never seen over filtration, which you do see in some wines.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm especially annoyed by wines that taste and smell like 2x4s instead of fruit, and I think that's a real problem with American wines in general. Nadine and I are going for the expression of our land, of our terroir, literally. And we certainly don't want to have oak getting in the way of that. And I have to say, in 19, we made red wine just terrific.
Yeah.
So I'd like to actually get away from using barrels all together on our delicate in character, that it really seems like it's possible that we'd be better to just not use any oak.
Yeah. Well,
and we're only 10 years into using these grapes.
Yeah, and you're coming in and out. So I guess when you get back on, there you are. Let's jump to the next wine, which I think you said was a white blend.
Okay. Yeah. So the next one is we call it Great Crossings, which is a reference to a very famous river crossing over here on the Youghiogheny River. And I mentioned in 2018 we had some unusual conditions because of a record amount of rain. We had about 80 inches of rain in Western Maryland that year, which is, our average I think is 44. So I mean, just a tremendous amount of rainfall, as everybody did on the East Coast. So for the first time since 2008. We actually had to invest in some grapes from California, and I have to say that it worked out very well this one time. I hope we don't have to do it again, but I'll take it. So our Great Crossings is a blend of Pinot Grigio with a little bit of Vidal from 2018, and then some California Chardonnay as well. And it's just a terrific wine.
And Paul, I recall your prices being very reasonable. What do these? What does
Paul,
I recall your prices being very reasonable. What do these? What does this?
Yeah, we have all four of the wines that we're tasting here today. We have on sale right now for four for $55. So at $13.75 a bottle, I believe it is. That's because great. We're not able to sample anything. We just decided to lower our prices and try to use good old-fashioned low prices to get people interested.
Yeah, if and when the tourism season kicks back up, you should be seeing a lot of folks again. Have you seen visitors in the last week or two?
We've had a lot of calls from people who we have a lot of visitors from outside the state here. And so, people come into Maryland and they come to Deep Creek, and they may have gotten off the airplane at BWI and a friend picked them up and brought them out here. They don't know anything about what's going on in our state. And so they don't know what to expect, and they're surprised to find out that, not everything is up to full operations yet. And so we have had a ton of calls and not very many visitors because we're not doing on-site tastings at all. We really don't have the ability with our small facility to do on-site tastings. And for anyone who's trying to do fine wine tasting outdoors, it's really hard to do that. It really, especially with delicate fruit wines like ours, the aromatics of it are just really challenging. So again, we're just simply trying to do curbside pickup, focus on getting the wine into people's hands at the best possible price, and we're just going to hope for a better day. That's where we're at.
Well, better days are on their way, I've been assured.
That's right. That's right.
So,
All right.
So you mentioned Pinot. You were one of the first to grow and produce a Pinot in the state, and you've done it fairly reliably.
Yeah, I don't know that we're the largest grower of Pinot Noir, but we're certainly up there. We have about 1,600 vines of it over there, and 4 different clones. And ironically, we have the same clones that are used, obviously a lighter body style. So here is our 18.
And Paul, you said 18,
which we
one of the worst
literally
years.
had one barrel colored ruby red wine, but very juicy and a lot of typicity, as the French would say. It smells and it tastes like Pinot Noir, especially kind of backcountry Burgundy Pinot. Not like anything from the West Coast, and even really, I would say, not like an Oregon Pinot Noir. Yeah. A lot of times people say, "Oh, you Oregon." Well, the Willamette Valley is darn near as hot as a lot of California.
Yeah.
And they have become very oaky, very concentrated, and very extracted there. Probably because they're trying to get with the program, so to speak, on Pinot Noir. And we're opposite direction. We're making old ones here, not new world wines in a way.
Paul, there's a question from Jenny asking, are you shipping within the state of Maryland?
We do not ship. We've never shipped. The reason we don't is because we're very proud to work with many fine retailers, and we're one of the few wines that are distributed by a distributor in the state. And so our feeling is we don't want to undercut our retailers. We're happy to have our retailers. Our retailers keep our business alive in the winter when we don't have any tourism business. So no, we don't do shipping in the state, but you can get our wines at any store in the state of Maryland can get our wines for you.
I was going to ask Jenny, why don't you post where you are, and maybe we can tell you who nearby stocks or can at least order the wines. I know anybody can order it, but somebody may have some in stock.
Right. Absolutely. And if you go in and ask for our wines in a store, if you tell your favorite retailer that our wines are distributed by Bacchus importers, they will hook you up.
So Paul, you've mentioned old world, earthy, rustic. That's kind of your house style, right? I mean, you're not aiming for California aromas, flavors, alcohol.
Exactly. And the main reason for that is that we sell about 3/4 of our wine here in our tasting room, and that comes from people. The sales go to people who are here for the weekend. They're not interested in a wine that has to lay in the cellar for 15 years. They're here. They're going to have a picnic on Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. They're going to sit by the river in this beautiful, majestic place that we're happy to have as our home. And so we try to make wines that are casual to go with that setting, basically. And it happens to be, we're very fortunate, it happens to be very appropriate for the type of varieties that we're using from this property in Allegheny County.
Paul, Jenny's in Baltimore County. Got any suggestions for her?
Well, it totally depends where county, but if she can tell me where in Baltimore County, perhaps I can direct her more. But
Jenny, your private shoppers, personal shoppers are here live, so let us know and we'll point you in a good direction. In the meantime, Paul, I remember that you had some whopping big wines. Your Watershed Red big wine, you said that's mostly Cab Franc, the latest one, or has that always been Cab Franc?
Our best-selling wine for all of our time in business is this wine right here, which is called Watershed Red Reserve, and continues to be year in and year out our best performing wine.
Hold
entirely, all of our wines are entirely from, trying to figure out, there we go, illustrator, and she did this gorgeous label that has been the signature label of the wine since we started it in the second year we were in business. And so anyway, that's been our best selling wine for many years. Our wine that we're best known. In fact,
we'll ship you those.
Here it is on our T-shirt if you like it. A lot of people, probably saw this at the mall this weekend, but a lot of people wearing it around the state. The other thing I want to mention, Kevin, is inconsistent with the style. Our wines are very low in sulfites.
Right.
In fact, often if you tested our wines, they probably would show no sulfites, no measurable sulfites. The federal government won't let you actually say your wines are low in sulfites. Either you contain sulfites or you have to say that you don't. And so we don't make a big deal out of that. We say that the wines contain sulfite like everybody else, but they are very low in sulfites and typically are actually sulfite free.
And that's because of winery practices and also vineyard practices, or?
No, it's because of winery practices.
Yeah.
That is a hallmark of natural winemaking and a very important part of it. And we try to do that every year. We try to drive down the amount of sulfites we have to use in finished wine.
No headaches.
Yeah, no headaches with our wine.
Good. No promises.
Unless you drink too much.
Unless you drink too much. Which is never encouraged. Drink responsibly. So, talking about other red blends, you've got Artisan Red, and do you still make Ursa Major?
Yes.
We do. Ursa Major is another crowd pleaser with Nadine's fabulous label, a portrait of a bear, which I witnessed her actually draw in less than 4 minutes, by the way. That's how good she is. And it's a portrait of a bear, and people love it. People come in and say, we want that bear wine.
Yeah.
And this is made from a Native American grape, a grape called Norton, with Birchview Vineyard in Carroll County. Chuck there just does a terrific job with it. And we're just so thrilled to have a Maryland-grown Norton, which is an Native American grape from the 1820s. And honestly, I say this in the tasting room all the time. It is the only American grape that makes a drinkable wine, literally. A dry wine. A drinkable dry wine. Not pretenders, but the only one that actually sort of tastes like a European wine. And it's made from this grape called Norton, which is very famous from Virginia. And there's a fair bit of it now grown in Maryland as well. We're not able to grow it here at our property. We don't have a long enough season for it, but Chuck does a great job with it in Carroll County.
And for anybody who wants to win the Maryland Wine Trivia game, go look up Paul's book about the Norton grape, otherwise known as Cynthia.
Right.
So Paul, you got one more wine. Oh, there it is. Okay, product placement. Is that the last remaining?
Yes. One more wine. It is. This is, we call it Artisan Red. This is our original label, literally the very first wine that we ever produced. And it's become kind of our, I don't say this in a derogatory way. It's kind of our kitchen red, our kitchen sink red. You know, it's, it varies. The blend varies. If we produce it, we don't produce it every year. But if we have a supply of an Artisan Red, and in 18 we had to do that because of the vintage, and so I made just this absolutely gulpable red, everyday red table wine from California grown Tempranillo, blended with very old growth, by the way, about a 40-year-old vineyard out there from my connections in California, from when I worked in California. And it's blended with Eastern varieties, but it's just absolutely delicious. You cannot go wrong for $13.75 a bottle. I challenge anyone to find a better wine out there on the market for this kind of money. It's just gorgeous.
It's a small.
Yeah, it's always been one of my favorite wines. Just easy drinking.
Yeah, easily the biggest wine in our lineup right now, also because of that California influence. Yeah. Can't do it every year. Wouldn't want to do it every year. Winemakers want to make wines that reflect where we live, but it's fun every now and then to get the chance to work with these kind of headbanger reds like this. So it's fun.
So, Paul, tell folks what they can expect when they come out.
Any other?
Well, I was going to ask, what can people expect if they come out and visit?
Well, if they come out and visit, it's a great summer to come to Deep Creek. I'll say that because it's every weekend is going to be an adventure to see what is open and what isn't open. But if you have a big group and you can rent a house for the weekend, I believe that it's a great summer to do that. The selling point about Deep Creek is, you're 3 hours from the beltways. You're in a whole nother universe out here. I mean, we have an alpine climate, which is intact still. A hot day for us here is 80 degrees. It's always cool at night. People think I'm kidding when I say it's great sleeping weather out here, but
it is.
But it is really true. It's a great place to come for a weekend or a long weekend and get away from it all.
Well, that's great. So I would say just in closing, anything else you'd like folks to know about the winery or about your goals, what you have planned, when that Cabernet is going to be released, a Cab Franc?
Well, yeah, we'll have our new watershed out. Again, I hope people can appreciate the difficulty for a small family-run operation in the world that we're in right now, and we're not sure what we're going to be able to do in a month from now.
Right.
And I just would ask that if you come to visit us, call ahead and we will do our best to accommodate you. That's all I can really say at this point.
Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I appreciate Nadine's tech support getting us up and running. And rarely,
cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Rarely do I get an opportunity to advocate or ask people to advocate for this, but ask your legislators to support rural broadband initiatives. I know all of our wineries who are out in rural areas struggle with this constantly, and it's something that we need to fix. So, with that, Paul, Nadine, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for having us, Kevin.
And
Thanks for having
look
us.
forward to actually
safe.
seeing you in person soon. And yes, be safe. And thanks. And with that, I wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. And we look forward to seeing you next week for yet another Wine Wednesday live virtual tasting. Take care.